Hello, welcome to another Tuesday Truth with Thera-mom. I'm Kelly Richardson, and I'm glad you're back. Today's Tuesday Truth goes out to parents of teenagers, and that is that if you have a teenager right now, you need to be more aware than ever of their mental health. Historically, we are seeing a rise right now in suicidal thoughts and attempts. And we have to be really aware and in tune of what's going on with our teenager right now. One of the things that I get asked all the time from people is it's hard to differentiate between normal teenage hormonal emotions and depression. And how do we know that difference? Because it's difficult to understand because they look very similar. Sadness, we know, is a normal emotion. It's a normal human experience that we have. And the difference is that with depression, the intensity and the duration of the sadness is different for teenagers that are experiencing clinical depression. Teenage depression goes beyond moodiness. And that's one of the big ways we differentiate. Depression in teenagers is different than just being sad. And it goes beyond just a sad mood that I'm kind of experiencing right now. One of the things that I talk to parents about all the time is trusting your gut. Because the most important mistake parents often make is that they consider whatever their teenagers are going through as a phase. And so often they know inside their gut that it's really not, that something's not right. My teenager's completely changed. I see their behaviors are different. It doesn't feel like it's just in moodiness. It's constant. And parents have that gut feeling, but it's easier to just say that it's a phase, or they're just hormonal. And we have to really take into account, is this a potential that this is a depression and not just a phase? So some of the symptoms that differentiate between teenage moodiness and depression are kids that have clinical depression often have physical complaints. They have headaches and stomach aches and other physical symptoms that are going on that are often associated with depression. Very often kids that are depressed socially withdraw, and which is really hard to tell right now because we're in this time of social isolation. But most of our teens are staying connected through social media. As things are opening up, they're maybe starting to spend time with their friends. But if your teenager is isolating from their peers, or if you see an entirely different shift in peer group, that might be a sign of depression. Another sign would be an academic decline. If there's an academic performance where you all of a sudden your child who used to be motivated or interested in school, and all of a sudden they have no interest and they are unmotivated, don't really care. We see this lack of interest in things that used to make them feel interested. If they used to play soccer and suddenly they don't want to do anything. They used to like to cook and bake and they don't do anything like that. Seeing this decline in things like that, that can be a sign or symptom of depression. When we were in school, we would see kids that had poor attendance or a sudden drop in grades, frustration with schoolwork. That can be a sign of depression. Substance abuse. So often we see, we know there's levels of experimentation that are normal that go with being a teenager. Kids that are self-medicating are often self-medicating for depression. So when they're regularly using it, when there becomes an increased use of frequency, that is very often a sign of depression. So often we'll hear kind of self-deprecating comments from kids that are depressed, saying things like, I'm so stupid, I can't do anything right, I I don't know what I'm doing. There's a sense of hopelessness. Things aren't going to get better. That can be a sign of depression. If you see your teenager starting to either overeat or undereat, kind of a different in their eating patterns, that can be a sign of depression. If they're oversleeping or undersleeping, if your teenager is not getting out of bed and just laying in bed all day and watching Netflix all day long, that can be a sign of depression. And this gets really tricky because we've been in this kind of shelter in place where we were telling them they had to stay home and we were telling them they couldn't connect. So it is very difficult right now to differentiate and discern between the two. But our fear as we see these suicide rates rise and the suicidal thoughts and ideations and attempts rise is we have to make sure that our teenagers don't fall in that category where we're just chalking it up to a phase or chalking it up to they'll grow out of this. Because we have to be really aware of what's going on. Another thing that we would see is persistent crying, a teenager who all of a sudden just starts crying out of the blue and can't stop and cries themselves to sleep or has excessive weepiness. That can be a sign of depression. I wrote down a couple of other things just because I didn't want to forget. Some warning signs. If they're talking or joking about committing suicide, that can be a strong warning sign as parents we have to be careful of. If they're saying things like, I'd be better off dead, or I wish I could disappear forever, that's a sign of depression. If they romanticize death and say things, if I died, people might love me more, or do you think people would come to my funeral, or do you think people would miss me? That's a sign of depression. Writing stories or poems about death and dying and suicide, that's a sign of depression. Engaging in reckless behavior can be a sign of depression. Giving away prized possessions, saying goodbye to family and friends, and seeking out weapons or pills or ways to hurt themselves. So depression, if it's untreated, can be very damaging. And you don't want to wait. As a parent, we want to make sure that we are proactively helping our teenager. If you suspect your teenager is depressed, you have to bring it up, these concerns to them in a loving manner, non-judgmental. You want to make sure that your teenager feels supported and loved by you, if they're going to talk openly about what's going on. You want to have an open dialogue and let them know what you've noticed and why you're concerned about it. And then you need to listen to what they share back and what they're going through. And if they're ready to talk about what's going on, you have to be ready to listen. Hold back from asking a lot of questions, and because that might make them feel overwhelmed, and just make it clear that you're ready to listen to whatever they're feeling. Communicating with a depressed teenager can be difficult because they can withdraw and not want to talk. And if you're seeing that may be a sign as well that they need to go in and speak with a professional. If you are suspecting that your teenager is depressed, a good first step would always be to go talk to your family physician, have your teenager talk with them, then the family physician can figure out and look and see and help you figure out a plan if they need to come see a professional like myself to get assessed, to figure out its depression, or where to go from there. But please, as parents, don't just chalk up if your teenager is living in their bedroom for 23 out of the 24 hours a day and not connecting to friends, and not connecting to you, and seeming hopeless or helpless and that things aren't getting better. Please don't just sit on it and think that they're going to miraculously get better. Obviously we have to get them out and getting vitamin D and getting some exercise, but it's hard to sometimes to exercise when you don't feel any motivation. And we see that with teenagers that are depressed, that just getting up and taking a shower can feel overwhelming, and they want to go back to bed because that's so much energy. And that's a big sign of depression. So if you're a parent and if it's confusing to figure it out, just know it is difficult. But we are here as professionals. We're here to help you figure that out. Your primary care physician can help you figure that out. And if your teenager needs help, that does not say anything negative about them. It doesn't say anything negative about you as a parent. It could be a chemical imbalance. It could be all of this social isolation has become more than what they're able to handle. We know that we've thrown a lot at our teenagers in the last couple months. And for them to figure this out on their own might be really difficult. Sometimes just a couple of hours talking to somebody who's not a family member, or where they just have this ability to take their mask off and share whatever's been on their heart, or feeling overwhelmed, just having that ability to talk and share can feel very cathartic. And if your teenager needs more, then we can help figure that out as well. But please don't just chalk it up to a phase. Don't ignore the signs and symptoms. As a parent, trust your gut. Listen to what feels right and wrong to you. If their behavior feels abnormal, you're probably right. One other symptom of teenage depression is irritability. And we see teenagers that are depressed are really agitated and very, very easily irritated. They're irritated with their family, they're irritated with their friends, they're irritated with their dog. They're just irritated. They find everybody to be annoying, and there's just a constant irritation. And that is often a sign of depression. Okay, so that was a lot. Just really concerned about all of our teenagers out there. I want to make sure with this mental health crisis going on that we're all in tune and we're all checking in on our lovely teenagers. Love on them, give them extra love right now. Stay safe and stay healthy. And I'll see you back next week for another Tuesday Truth with Thera-mom. I'm Kelly Richardson, and have a great week.